Thank you very much. Good to be back in Dublin, and good to be back in a country that has referendums, because of course across the rest of Europe governments do their absolute best to make sure that nobody ever gets the chance to express an opinion, so you're jolly lucky in that sense. One thing I want to deal with is, you'd have thought in the Lisbon referendums, you'd have thought that our little group in the European Parliament that poured millions of euros into the Irish campaign. In fact, the accusations of foreign interference were very loud and clear and strong. I want to deal with that straight away. I've just come in from the airport. I don't know whether any of you have noticed, but nearly all of the posters that are up on the lampposts have been funded by European money, chiefly by groups in the European Parliament. You have already, of course, here in Dublin, a European Commission information office. Equally, you have the government putting out its own leaflet, which masquerades as being neutral. Indeed, you've had foreign interference in your politics since 1973, to the extent that most of your laws are now made somewhere else, and your own Supreme Court is, of course, in Luxembourg. So I really think this very modest little attempt by us to try and put some arguments out and to help the no side, for us to be accused of interfering in Irish affairs is frankly ludicrous. What we have done, and it's rather a repeat, in the sense that it's the same operation that we've done before, is we have put together this leaflet, and we will be delivering that leaflet through every door in the country. And as I understand it, that's fairly well advanced at the moment. Certainly my email inbox at the European Parliament is very, very full of some extremely complimentary messages, others perhaps not so much, but that should be, and ought to be, the nature of democracy. So we've done this before, that is our contribution, and I hope that it does help, for at least let it be a proper argument. Our chief argument is that this treaty represents an unacceptable loss of sovereignty, to the extent where it begins to matter very little what government you have, certainly in terms of the ability to set a budget, because you will have to change your constitution in line with the new German plans. So we would argue that that's wrong. We would argue that Ireland's actually had a pretty rotten deal out of all of this. You're loaded up with bank debt, where other countries have had much of that debt written off. Whenever the European Union asks the Irish politicians to jump, they say, how high? You've been the good boys, but perhaps another way of putting it is, you've been the yes men. And I would also normally argue, in a referendum like this, why should anybody in Ireland believe their own political class? After all, they said that enlargement to the east would not mean big migratory flows into Ireland. They were wrong. In Lisbon too, we were told that if you voted for this treaty, it would be good for jobs, and my understanding is about 120,000 jobs have been lost since that second referendum. So, I would normally argue that. But what I would like to point out is that, of course, this is not the only treaty, and I don't think that debate really is being had in Ireland. There is another treaty following hard on the heels of this, and some suggest it's the evil twin to the Fiscal Union, which of course is the ESM treaty. Now, many are saying that it's very important that, of course, you must go out and you must vote yes to this treaty, because in the future, if Ireland needs more bailout money, it's very, very important that we're on side. Well, it's very important, I think, to point this out, that with the ESM treaty, this second treaty, which the government doesn't propose to give you a referendum on, far from this being some sort of cash cow for Ireland, actually you are going to be liable for up to 11 billion euros. And indeed the first payment will be demanded in July of 250 million euros. So far from this being really very good for you, it could be rather bad for you. And I would be tempted to ask, where on earth would this bailout money come from anyway? Ireland is a very small country. We are probably on the verge of a bailout being needed for a country that is 7 times the size of your economy. I'm talking about Spain, although there are some sort of bets going on as to whether Spain or Italy, indeed, which has the 3rd largest level of debt of any country in the world, will be the next to be bailed out. So to argue that you should support this treaty because in time it will mean Ireland will be bailed out again, I don't think is a very powerful argument. So normally with a referendum, you know, it is about the issue. There's a yes side and a no side, and we are more than prepared to engage in that. But I do think, actually, there is now a very much bigger issue than the specific arguments for or against this treaty. The Eurozone is in deep crisis. In fact, I would think we're probably on the verge of some sort of disaster. It could happen this weekend. Maybe it'll take a few more months. But no one can deny that the situation is absolutely, desperately serious. All of which, of course, makes the Irish government's argument of vote yes for the Stability Treaty somewhat laughable. Because whatever else the Eurozone is, it certainly isn't stable. We've just had a new president in France. You've had a very odd first day, didn't you, really, with getting wet and the lightning strike, and straight off to see his German boss. We don't know what the result of that meeting really was, but Hollande has been elected to say he must renegotiate the terms of this treaty. The Greeks, you know, the pro-bailout parties, the pro-treaty parties in Greece collapsed to less than a third of the vote in their first general election. Right across Europe, there is a wave of rebellion. There is another general election coming up in the Netherlands in June. What is the point of Ireland saying yes to a treaty, changing its constitution, when it is now extremely unlikely that this treaty will be able to proceed in its current form? It is virtually impossible that what you're being asked to vote on is going to stay as it is. There are going to be huge changes to the treaty, and there may well be even bigger changes to the Eurozone itself. So whatever the arguments for or against this treaty, whatever the conventional arguments that one would make in any normal referendum campaign, to me the biggest issue here is it would be madness, absolute madness, to sign yourself up to something that may well not exist in 2 or 3 weeks' time. Thank you. Well, the answer to question number one, I must say, the day after Ireland voted no to the Lisbon Treaty was the most instructive day of my life in the European Parliament. One MEP wore a leprechaun hat, so, you know, don't say we all dressed up as leprechauns, it's nonsense. One did. It was the most instructive day because it was the day that I learned that whatever I'd thought about the European project up until that point in time had been a gross underestimate in terms of just what very unpleasant, bad people we've got now running this continent. Because the message was clear. Ireland had voted no, but the message was clear. We will not bow to populism. That was the cry of the Parliament. It is unacceptable that people through the ballot box can stop this great historic project. And I realised that day, you know, that we were really up against some very powerful, not undemocratic forces, but actually anti-democratic forces. Point two is the contribution of a group of MEPs here. Welcome. Well, you know, the yes side has had hundreds of MEPs visiting here over the last couple of decades, a never-ending round of commissioners and a never-ending bout of propaganda. So all we are trying to do is to redress the balance slightly. The one thing I think we can do, and have done in the previous referendums, is something that nobody else in the No campaign seems to be placed to do, which is to actually get something out through the doors. And we've done that. This is the third time we've used this exercise. Does it do any good? Well, after that first vote, the Taoiseach got up. Brian Cowan got up and said the next afternoon, in making his excuses, that Nigel Farage and a group of extremists in Strasbourg have subverted the democratic process in Ireland. So I think we did make a difference that time, because if they resort to abuse, you know you're doing well, and I hope that we get the same abuse this time. Third question, how long will I give the euro? Well, to be honest with you, if I knew the answer to that, I'd be down at Ladbrokes and not here talking to you. But I think, despite the fact that they've invested an enormous amount of capital, and I don't just mean financial capital, I mean political capital in the euro project, I think we've gone past the point of no return. And I think, really, this democratic revolution that is taking place both in North and the South of Europe, frankly, has a momentum that is unstoppable. Last year, deposits, actual cash bank deposits in Greece fell by over 20%. They're now falling at a rate of about 2.5% a day. So the run's on. The bank run is on. And indeed, in Spain last night, probably mistakenly, but a BBC journalist, when interviewed on a talk show radio in Spain last night, said to expats in Spain, get your money out of Spanish banks. So the bank run is on. I think we're going to see a collapse by the middle of the summer. Okay. Or possibly even before you have this referendum, which reinforces my point, it doesn't make sense to sign up to something that may not exist.
Farage, how do you think Irish people will like to be told how to vote by outsiders?
Well, as I said, you've been governed since 1973 by foreigners and outsiders, and you've got in this campaign vast amounts of foreign money. Just look at the lamppost coming in from the airport, telling you what you should and shouldn't do, albeit your own weak, pathetic political class allowing them to do so. All we are doing here is it is a tiny attempt to redress the balance. It is completely up to you, but I repeat the point. It does not make sense to vote for a treaty and change your constitution when the terms of that treaty will have disappeared within the next few weeks.
Yeah. Thank you.
Faith Kelly from the Irish Independent. I asked Mr Farage if he approved of the British government giving a contribution to the Irish bailout in November 2010. And secondly, you say your funds come from central EFD funds. Where do those central funds come to? Are your parliamentary allowances? Various MEPs get parliamentary allowances, like Labour MEPs are contributing to the Labour Party campaign. Are you contributing to this EFD campaign through your parliamentary allowances in Europe?
This comes from the information budget. The 400 budget is the actual designated line in the European Parliament. You can look it up on the European Parliament website, and it is designed to put out information. Now, I think when all of these rules were drawn up, there was an assumption that anybody that went to the European Parliament would put out information that was casting all the doings of the European Union in a positive light. They perhaps hadn't expected a group like the EFD group to exist, but we know we're perfectly within the rules of doing what we've done, and we've had everything legally checked.
Yeah, I'd just like to add on to that, that over half the money for the leaflets comes from the budget of the Central Secretariat of the EFD group as a whole.
It's all central.
How much money is being spent?
Sorry, the question.
A piddling amount compared to the other side.
Did you support the British exchange contribution?
No, I don't support pouring good money after bad. Thus far, the British government has risked £1,500 per British household on defending a currency that inevitably is going to collapse in ruins. Because the British public is so upset about it, we're now doing it through the back door by making further promises to the International Monetary Fund. And we're not saving the euro, and we're not actually helping the citizens in any of these countries where people have been bailed out. Because of this grave error of judgment, where the Commissioner of the Central Bank said we cannot allow any losses through the mess of the private banking sector. Effectively what the bailouts are for is to repay banks, predominantly French and German
So you
ones.
disagree with David Cameron when he said he was helping out a friend in need?
I don't think he was helping you in any way at all, and certainly, as we contributed to the Greek bailout as well, I mean, do you actually think keeping Greece in the euro is helping them? No, it's crucifying them. Yeah. And as far as ESM is concerned, this whole question of future bailouts, I mean, it is a very negative argument, isn't it? That, vote yes for this treaty, accept that you're going to get the ESM treaty as well, and vote yes because we might need bailing out again. It doesn't sound to me to be a very ringing endorsement of previous government decisions. The point I made was this, that far from it being some potential wonderful source of funds that will bail you out if once again that is needed, it may actually, because there are other countries far bigger than yours, way bigger than yours. Spain is about 7 times the size of Ireland, and Italy is about 12 times the size of Ireland. So far from this ESM being there to help you, you are actually signing up a commitment that you're a contributor to it. It may well cost you money. Indeed, your first payment, 250 million euros, is due this July. There's another one due in October. And
you have no answer, though, to where the funds might come from if we do need a bailout.
Listen. But the time Ireland needs a second bailout, if it does, there won't be any money. It will all have gone because you'll be bailing out much bigger economies that are in dire trouble, and you will find yourselves far more likely to be a contributor financially than you will be a beneficiary from it.
Yeah.